What if I told you there's a single dietary intervention, not a pill, not a supplement, but a real whole food that has been shown in clinical studies to reverse muscle loss, even in individuals well into their 70s and beyond? Now, I understand that kind of claim can sound like clickbait, and we've all been trained, rightly, to be skeptical of quick fixes or magic bullets. But this isn't a fantasy. It's grounded in something very real, a convergence of evidence from nutrition science, gerontology, and muscle physiology. And it turns out that this particular food, which I'll name in just a moment, is often misunderstood, underconsumed, and profoundly undervalued when it comes to healthy aging. The stakes here are high. Sarcopenia, or age muscle loss, doesn't just impact mobility. It's strongly associated with insulin resistance, frailty, falls, hospitalization, and even early mortality. In fact, the decline in muscle mass and strength after age 50 is so consistent and predictable that researchers sometimes refer to it as the silent crisis of aging. But it doesn't have to be inevitable. We now know that with the right inputs, particularly nutrition combined with resistance training, the body retains an astonishing capacity for adaptation, even in the later decades of life. In today's video, we're going to explore that adaptation in detail. We'll unpack the mechanisms behind sarcopenia, what really causes muscle to deteriorate with age, and why it accelerates after 60. The one specific food, backed by randomized trials, that stimulates muscle protein synthesis even in older adults with anabolic resistance, the synergy between nutrition and resistance training, and how to harness both without extreme regimens. What most people get wrong about protein, including myths around kidney health, timing, and absorption, and how that's costing them strength. Practical, research-backed protocols you can apply, whether you're 55 or 75, to not just preserve muscle, but regain it. This isn't about aesthetics, it's about function, it's about being able to walk without pain, lift your grandchild, carry your own groceries, get off the floor without assistance, and beyond that, it's about metabolic health, glucose regulation, mitochondrial efficiency, and ultimately longevity. Because muscle is far more than tissue. It's a metabolic organ, an endocrine organ, and one of the strongest predictors of health span we have. So let's go deeper. Let's unpack what the science actually says, and more importantly, how to apply it. Because at 75, your body may not be as young as it once was, but it's far from incapable. The ability to build strength, to reverse muscle loss, is still within reach. Are you ready? Let's begin by redefining muscle. Not just as something that enables strength, but as a metabolically active organ that plays a central role in whole body health. When most people think about muscle, especially in the context of aging, they imagine strength, balance, maybe mobility. And all of that is true. But what often gets overlooked is that skeletal muscle is also one of the largest sites of glucose disposal in the human body. In fact, it's responsible for roughly 80% of postprandial glucose uptake, meaning after you eat a meal, most of the glucose that enters your bloodstream is cleared by your skeletal muscle. And here's why that matters. As we age, many people begin to experience declines in insulin sensitivity. This can lead to a condition we call insulin resistance, which is foundational not only in the development of type 2 diabetes, but in cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, and even certain cancers. One of the most potent defenses against this isn't a medication, it's not even a dietary change per se. It's preserving and, if possible, increasing muscle mass. A large prospective study published in Diabetes Care followed over 13,000 adults and found that individuals with higher muscle mass had a significantly lower risk of insulin resistance, independent of age or BMI. In other words, two people could have the same body weight and same diet, but the one with more muscle will have better metabolic health. Muscle isn't just something that allows us to move. It's an organ of glucose regulation, hormone signaling, and energy partitioning. Now, aging doesn't automatically mean losing muscle, but the default trajectory in the absence of intervention is one of steady decline. On average, adults lose 3 to 8% of muscle mass per decade after the age of 30, and that rate accelerates after 60. But again, that's the average, not the rule. It can be changed. And this brings us to a key concept: metabolic reserve. Think of muscle as a form of biological savings. The more you build and maintain, over time, the greater your buffer against injury, illness, and aging. When someone experiences a major surgery or hospitalization in their 70s, the amount of muscle they walk in with can quite literally determine whether they walk out independently or at all. Here's a story that stuck with me. I had a patient, mid-70s, who had spent decades prioritizing strength. Nothing extreme, just consistent resistance training, walking, and thoughtful protein intake. When she was hospitalized for a severe infection, her recovery was remarkable. Her physical therapist told me, "We never see bounce back like this." But here's the truth. It wasn't magic. It was metabolic capital that she'd been building for years. That's why I emphasize this point so early, because it's not just about feeling stronger, it's about being able to recover when life throws the inevitable curveballs. The ability to stand up unassisted, to carry groceries, to play with your grandkids. These aren't luxuries, they are proxies for independence. And muscle is at the heart of it. So before we even talk about what to eat or how to train, I want to leave you with a reflection. If you were to imagine your body not just as something you use, but something you invest in, how would that shift your daily habits? Because every rep, every meal, every walk, it's not about chasing perfection, it's about making deposits into your future resilience. Now that we've established the critical role of muscle as a metabolic organ, let's turn to one of the most underappreciated levers we have for preserving and rebuilding that muscle, even into our 70s, 80s, and beyond. That lever is protein, but not just any protein. Protein rich in the amino acid leucine, consumed in the right dose, at the right time, and in the right form. Let's start with why leucine matters. When we eat protein, our body breaks it down into amino acids. Among these, leucine is unique. It's the primary amino acid that initiates muscle protein synthesis, MPS, the process by which our bodies build new muscle tissue. Think of leucine as the key that turns the ignition in the muscle-building engine. Here's where things get more nuanced and more important with age. As we get older, our muscles become less sensitive to the anabolic stimulus of amino acids. This phenomenon is called anabolic resistance. It's part of the reason why older adults can eat what seems like a decent amount of protein and still continue to lose muscle. But, and this is key, anabolic resistance is not a permanent state. It can be overcome. The right dose and quality of protein, especially when paired with resistance exercise, can reignite muscle-building pathways even in individuals well into their 70s and 80s. So what's the one food that's been shown to reverse muscle loss in seniors? It's actually a class of foods, high leucine, animal-based protein sources. And the most effective among them in clinical research are whey protein isolate and eggs. Let me give you a real-world example. A randomized controlled trial published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition studied older adults aged 70 plus who consumed whey protein enriched with leucine over 12 weeks. The group receiving this supplement saw significant improvements in muscle mass, strength, and walking speed compared to those who didn't. Why whey? Because it has the highest natural concentration of leucine of any dietary protein, around 10 to 12% leucine by weight. That's roughly 2.5 grams of leucine per 25 grams of protein, which is right around the threshold needed to maximally stimulate MPS in older adults. And eggs? They're not just nutrient-dense and easy to prepare, they're also rich in high-quality, bioavailable protein with a leucine profile that makes them uniquely effective for seniors. They're also easier to chew, digest, and incorporate into meals than tougher cuts of meat, making them an ideal protein source for those with appetite or dental challenges. Now, does this mean plant-based proteins have no role? Not at all. But the reality is most plant proteins are lower in leucine and less bioavailable, which means you have to consume more total protein volume to hit the same anabolic threshold. That's not always realistic for older adults with reduced appetite. This isn't about ideology, it's about physiology. If you're aiming for muscle preservation, and especially if you're dealing with anabolic resistance, you need to hit a leucine threshold of about 2.5 grams per meal. That usually means 30 to 40 grams of high-quality protein per sitting, particularly from sources like whey, eggs, fish, or poultry. Here's something practical you can try. In the morning, a time when most older adults underconsume protein, try starting with a whey protein shake mixed with water or milk, paired with a couple of boiled eggs or Greek yogurt. You've now front-loaded your day with a strong anabolic signal, which many people miss entirely by having cereal, toast, or coffee alone. And let's be clear, this isn't about bulking up. It's about preserving function, preventing the kind of frailty that makes daily life harder with each passing year. When you pair this protein strategy with the right kind of training, which we'll cover shortly, it becomes a powerful, evidence-based way to reverse muscle loss. So ask yourself, are you hitting your protein target at each meal, or are you missing the opportunity to build muscle 3 times a day? And if you find this kind of breakdown helpful, actionable, but grounded in science, I encourage you to subscribe. It helps us keep delivering these deep dives into what actually moves the needle for long-term health. By now, you've heard the term anabolic resistance more than once. So let's unpack what it actually means, why it matters, and most importantly, what you can do about it. Anabolic resistance refers to the blunted muscle-building response to dietary protein that occurs with aging. In other words, older adults don't get the same muscle bang for their protein buck as younger individuals. Where a 25-year-old might stimulate robust muscle protein synthesis with just 20 grams of protein, a 70-year-old may require 35 to 40 grams to get a comparable effect. Why does this happen? There are several mechanisms at play. As we age, we see a decline in muscle cell sensitivity to amino acids, diminished blood flow to muscle tissue post-meal, and reduced efficiency in mTOR signaling, the key cellular pathway that governs muscle synthesis. Think of it like trying to start a car on a cold morning. It still starts, but it takes a stronger spark and a bit more time. But here's the good news. Anabolic resistance isn't a fixed state. It can be improved or even reversed with the right combination of nutritional strategy and mechanical loading. Let's look at the evidence. In a pivotal study published in the Journal of Physiology, older men and women who performed resistance exercise prior to consuming protein showed a significantly enhanced anabolic response compared to those who consumed protein without exercise. The training acted like a priming signal, making the muscle tissue more receptive to the amino acids. And the effect was dose-dependent, meaning the more intense the muscle contraction, the greater the sensitivity post-meal. This is why I often say, resistance training is the signal, protein is the substrate. Without the signal, the protein has nowhere to go. Without the substrate, the muscle has nothing to build with. So what does this mean practically? If you're in your 60s, 70s, or beyond, and you're consuming protein, but not pairing it with muscle stimulation, you may only be getting half the benefit, or less. Let's translate this into something actionable. If you're not currently exercising, start small. 3 times a week, try a 15 to 20-minute resistance circuit. Chair squats, wall push-ups, step-ups, light dumbbell rows. You're not training for aesthetics. You're training to send a signal. Follow that session with a leucine-rich meal, like eggs and yogurt, or a whey protein shake, and you've just created an environment primed for muscle repair and growth. Over time, your muscles adapt. The anabolic resistance diminishes. The protein becomes more effective, and your strength, functional day-to-day strength, improves. And it's worth pointing out, this isn't just about muscle. Improving anabolic sensitivity has downstream effects on glucose metabolism, bone density, and inflammatory signaling. It's a system-wide benefit. One patient of mine, 74 years old, pre-diabetic, and beginning to struggle with mobility, committed to this strategy. He started with just bodyweight movements and 30 grams of whey protein after each session. Within 3 months, not only had he gained measurable lean mass, but his fasting glucose had dropped, and he reported needing less assistance getting out of chairs and climbing stairs. That's not theory, that's application. Now, it's tempting to believe that muscle building is for the young, that after a certain age, decline is inevitable. But I'd invite you to question that. What if muscle loss in aging isn't inevitable, but optional, depending on your inputs? That's a powerful shift, one that places agency back into your hands. And this is just the beginning. In the next section, we'll explore how resistance training doesn't just work, it's essential to aging well. We'll look at the physiology behind it and the protocols that deliver real results. If protein is the raw material your body needs to build muscle, then resistance training is the blueprint, the architectural signal that tells your body what to build, where to build it, and how much to invest. Without that signal, your body has no reason to preserve or grow muscle, especially as we age, when the default biological setting is catabolism, the gradual breakdown of tissue over time. This is why sedentary aging is so dangerous. It's not just that we're doing less, it's that our bodies are actively dismantling what's not being used. And here's the key insight. Even the best protein in the world won't prevent muscle loss without a stimulus. Nutrition and exercise work in tandem. They are synergistic, not substitutive. Let's look at the science. A meta-analysis published in Aging Research Reviews pooled data from over 40 randomized controlled trials involving adults over the age of 60. The findings were clear. Resistance training, especially when combined with adequate protein intake, led to significant improvements in both lean body mass and functional strength. More importantly, these gains were not just cosmetic, they translated to real-world outcomes: reduced fall risk, improved walking speed, better balance, and fewer hospitalizations. And it doesn't take a lot. One of the most encouraging studies came from a trial in the Journal of Gerontology, which followed sedentary adults aged 75 and older. Participants who performed just 2 sessions per week of basic resistance training, things like leg presses, chest presses, and seated rows, experienced substantial increases in strength and muscle size over 12 weeks. Many were doing less than 30 minutes per session. This is critical. You don't need a gym membership, a personal trainer, or heavy weights to get started. What you need is consistency, progression, and a commitment to challenge your muscles, even modestly, on a regular basis. Here's a simple framework I recommend for beginners. Twice per week, 3 sets each of chair squats, wall push-ups, resistance band rows, and step-ups. Use a tempo, 2 seconds up, 2 seconds down. Control matters more than weight. Progression. Once an exercise feels easy, increase reps, slow the tempo, or add light resistance. And if you can tolerate more, great. But don't let the perfect become the enemy of the good. Just 15 to 20 minutes twice a week can be enough to send a powerful signal, especially when paired with high-quality protein. Now you might ask, what if I have joint pain, or arthritis, or mobility limitations? This is where modification becomes key. Seated exercises, water-based resistance training, and isometric holds are all excellent options. The goal isn't to mimic a bodybuilder's workout, it's to engage the muscle fibers in a way that promotes growth and preserves function. Because here's the truth. Your muscles don't know your age, they only respond to tension. And when you stop sending that tension signal, your body assumes you no longer need the muscle, and it begins to reallocate resources elsewhere. That's the biological basis for sarcopenia. So we need to fight back, not aggressively, but consistently. Train the body, feed the muscle, repeat. Over time, you'll not only preserve lean mass, you'll improve your glucose control, reduce inflammation, and, perhaps most importantly, remain independent. Let me leave you with this reflection. What's one simple way you could introduce more resistance into your weekly routine, even just your body weight, to send your body the message that your muscle still matters? And if you're finding value in these evidence-based, longevity-focused strategies, consider subscribing. It supports the channel and helps us continue to bring you real tools that make a real difference. Next up, we'll tackle one of the most overlooked and misunderstood aspects of muscle nutrition: how protein timing and distribution affect your body's ability to build and preserve muscle across the day. If I had to identify one area where most people, even those who are fairly health conscious, consistently miss the mark, it's not in how much protein they consume over the course of the day, it's in how they distribute it. Let's start with a common pattern I see all the time. A light breakfast, maybe some toast and fruit, a sandwich at lunch with 15 to 20 grams of protein, and then finally a protein-heavy dinner with 50 grams or more. The total daily intake might look reasonable, say 80 or 90 grams, but the distribution is skewed. And in older adults, that matters more than you might think. Here's why. Muscle protein synthesis is a threshold-based process. Especially in people over 60, you need approximately 2.5 grams of leucine per meal, typically about 30 to 40 grams of high-quality protein, to optimally stimulate that muscle-building response. When you fall below that, the body may still use the protein for other processes, but you won't get the full anabolic benefit. This is one of the reasons why studies show that even with identical total protein intake, those who distribute it evenly across 3 meals experience significantly greater muscle preservation and growth than those who front or backload their protein at 1 meal. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition compared 2 groups of older adults. One group consumed 90 grams of protein evenly across 3 meals, 30/30/30, while the other consumed a skewed distribution, 10/20/60. After several weeks, the even distribution group had markedly higher rates of muscle protein synthesis and better nitrogen balance, both indicators of muscle maintenance. It's not just about the total, it's about giving your body multiple opportunities throughout the day to initiate the muscle building process. Let me offer a practical way to implement this. Breakfast. A scoop of whey isolate, 25 to 30 g protein, mixed into Greek yogurt with a handful of berries. Lunch, grilled chicken salad with olive oil dressing and a side of quinoa, 30 to 35 g protein. Dinner, wild salmon with steamed vegetables and lentils, or rice, 35 to 40 g protein. Each meal hits the leucine threshold. Each provides a stimulus, and cumulatively, you're now building muscle in a way that's both physiologically efficient and sustainable. It's also worth addressing a persistent myth here, the idea that high protein intake is harmful to kidney function in healthy individuals, even older adults. There is no credible evidence that protein intakes up to 1.6 to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day impair renal function. The confusion stems from studies in patients with pre-existing kidney disease, which is a different scenario entirely. In fact, the greater danger for aging populations is insufficient protein intake, not excess. And that leads us to a deeper point. Aging is often accompanied by a natural reduction in appetite and caloric intake, a phenomenon known as the anorexia of aging. This makes it even more critical to prioritize protein at every opportunity because the window to hit that anabolic threshold shrinks. A patient of mine once told me, "I just don't feel like eating much anymore." She was in her mid-70s, recovering from a fall, and had lost significant muscle. We shifted her to a 3-meal structure with 30 grams of protein per meal and added 1 whey-based shake between lunch and dinner. Over 3 months, not only did her lean mass increase, but her physical therapy outcomes improved dramatically. The takeaway? It's not just what you eat, it's when, how, and how often. So let me ask you this. What does your protein distribution look like across the day, and where could you introduce a small change that moves the needle? Because optimizing your muscle health isn't about radical overhauls. It's about small, strategic shifts done consistently that compound over time. Next, we'll bring all of this into the bigger picture. We'll talk about how muscle mass connects directly to longevity, not just lifespan, but health span, and why this may be one of the most powerful levers you can control. By now, you've heard a lot about muscle, about protein quality, anabolic resistance, and the importance of resistance training. But here's the deeper reason this all matters. Muscle isn't just about movement or metabolism. It's one of the strongest predictors we have of long-term survival and health span. Let's define that last term for a moment, health span. It's the length of time you live free of disease, disability, and dependency. Not just years on the calendar, but quality years. Years where you can walk unassisted, think clearly, climb stairs, play with your grandkids, and recover from life's inevitable disruptions. And, in the last 10 years, multiple large-scale studies have converged on one conclusion. Skeletal muscle mass is one of the most powerful, independent predictors of health span and longevity. A landmark study from the American Journal of Medicine followed over 3,600 older adults and found that low muscle mass was associated with significantly higher all-cause mortality, independent of body mass index or total weight. In fact, individuals with higher muscle mass had better survival rates across nearly every age group, even when adjusting for confounders like activity level, diet, and comorbidities. Another study, the Health ABC study, looked specifically at sarcopenia and disability in adults over 70. Those with the lowest quintile of muscle mass and strength were more than twice as likely to develop functional limitations over a 6-year period. The message is clear: the more muscle you retain as you age, the longer you stay independent. But it's not just observational. Interventional data supports this too. Trials involving resistance training in seniors show not only improvements in lean mass, but reductions in fall risk, hospitalization, and even depressive symptoms. The body adapts, even in the 8th and 9th decades of life. Here's the takeaway: losing muscle isn't a normal part of aging. It's a consequence of disuse and undernourishment. And the sooner we acknowledge that, the sooner we can take action. Because unlike genetics, which you can't change, muscle is modifiable. It responds to input. It reflects your behaviors. It's one of the few areas in medicine where the feedback loop is clear and empowering. Train, eat, recover, adapt. Think of muscle as your body's reserve, not just for glucose regulation or locomotion, but for everything from immune resilience to injury recovery. A person with more muscle can withstand more illness, more stress, more physical trauma. It's a buffer, a kind of biological savings account. One patient of mine in her 80s was diagnosed with cancer. She underwent aggressive treatment, including chemotherapy and surgery. Her oncologist later told her, "Your recovery was better than patients 15 years younger." Why? Because she entered that experience with a foundation of strength. Her muscle wasn't just helping her walk, it was helping her heal. So here's a final reflection for this section. If we reframed aging not as a process of decline, but as a training problem, how would that shift our approach? Because the science is unequivocal. Preserving and building muscle is a longevity intervention, and unlike many other strategies, it's accessible, scalable, and backed by decades of data. In the conclusion, we'll recap these key strategies and distill them into a practical, sustainable protocol you can implement starting today, no matter your age or fitness level. Let's step back for a moment and tie this all together. We started with a provocative question: can one food reverse muscle loss in seniors, even at 75? And what we've discovered is that it's not just possible, it's evidence-based. But the deeper truth is this: it's not about one food, it's about one system. A system built on 6 pillars we explored today. Muscle isn't cosmetic, it's metabolic. It regulates glucose, supports immune function, and acts as a reserve in times of stress or illness. It is one of the most potent, modifiable predictors of health span we have. Leucine-rich, high-quality protein, like whey and eggs, is essential to stimulating muscle protein synthesis, especially in the presence of age anabolic resistance. Anabolic resistance can be reversed with the right dosing of protein and consistent mechanical tension from strength training. Resistance training isn't optional. It's the biological signal that tells your body, this tissue matters, don't lose it. Even minimal, well-structured training can profoundly impact strength, mobility, and resilience. Protein timing and distribution matter. It's not just how much you eat in a day, but whether you're hitting the anabolic threshold at each meal, especially breakfast, where most people fall short. Muscle mass predicts health span. More than cholesterol, more than blood pressure, more than BMI. Your ability to move, lift, and recover is tightly linked to your risk of disease, disability, and death. And here's the empowering part. None of these require extreme measures. No crash diets, no high-intensity boot camps, just steady, consistent action, guided by science and tailored to your body. So here's my challenge to you. For the next 7 days, try this. Add one resistance-based movement into your routine, even just chair squats or wall push-ups. Pair it with 30 grams of high-quality protein, like whey isolate, eggs, or Greek yogurt. Repeat 3 times. That's it. You'll start to feel stronger, but more importantly, you'll begin to rewire your physiology to shift from decline to growth, from fragility to capacity. Because at the end of the day, aging is inevitable, but muscle loss isn't. You have more agency than you think. And whether you're 55, 65, or 75, the body still responds to intelligent input. The adaptation window hasn't closed. It's just waiting for a signal. If this message resonated, if you believe in evidence-based tools for long-term health and not short-term hacks, consider subscribing. We're building a community here that's focused on health span over hype, strength over shortcuts, and science over fear. Leave a comment below. What's one thing you're going to change this week to protect your strength and independence? And if you found this valuable, give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and join us on this journey toward a longer, stronger life. Until next time, train with purpose, eat with intention, and never stop investing in your future self.